How far are we from the river?
Many, many miles.
It may be just a matter of you have to teleport back and say, hey, you need a ride?
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to get them here without bringing them here, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no GPS. You guys don't have latitude, longitude, so...
I'll say,
We're mariners,
if
right?
each of you agree to this, we will arrange for teleportation circles.
And Ashatiru agrees. Mr. Locke wants to speak about it in person before he agrees.
Of course he does. I knew that was coming.
So needy.
Here, let me save this map because you guys did such a good job on it.
It's our art.
Yay.
We're
I
gonna
was
get a
trying to
gold
see-
star.
I was looking for like a tree or like a plant or something in the PHB that we could buy that palm tree from.
I'm calling this Bestest Desart. There you go.
Bestest desert. I love it.
So who's going to go talk to Locke?
I'm gonna stay here in the tent.
Yeah, Khalil's gonna stay back as
Tarin
well.
will.
Duke
I'll
is
go-
totally willing to get out of the heat. He'll
I'll
go
talk to
back to the place with
Locke.
Tarin.
Yeah, we don't need to actually erase the tent or anything because it looks even better on this map. Now it looks like the tree has some purpose. The pool actually has some water in it. I dig it. We're good. So everybody's going to go talk to Locke. Move your standee over to the inn so I know. And again, you return to the inn, and you're given some time to get situated, unless you summon him immediately when you return.
We'll take
I don't really
a
care.
meal or something before.
Sure.
Summon him immediately? Alright, and he comes up to the guardhouse, waits to be invited in, sits down, puts his hands together, and says, so, there's been a development.
Does he still have the illusion up?
He does. None of you have seen his true form except Tarin, and it's not an illusion.
Whatever. Okay.
No, he's not giving off any magic at all that he's giving an illusion. Not like with the it's different than the shroud the drow were using, in other words.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were to touch him, I have a feeling you'd actually feel the human.
Yes. So yeah, he says there's been a development, I take it.
You could say that.
So I have to say that I'm not particularly pleased that you are attempting to sell me to Ashatiru.
No. Not sell. Speak with.
He's honestly terrified that you would destroy him one-on-one. Like, I'm a little surprised that that's your take on the situation.
Says this is a man who is... Man is the wrong word. This is a fiend who is loyal to the cults of Ith and would see
think
me
you and I both
serve to
know-
his ends.
I think you and I both know that most fiends are loyal to themselves.
He says, whatever honeyed words Ashatiru gave you, they seem to have worked. You understand there's a reason I sent you to Ravenhair and not to him.
Ravenhair sent us.
Ravenhair sent us to him and attempted to bully him into cowing before her, basically.
I would like to see that.
That's a default, I should say.
He says, I'm very hesitant, though capable, to make a move against Ashatiru if need be. If I were to move against him and destroy him, as he says I'm capable of, that would tip my hand to the cult far sooner than I wanted to.
All the more reason to meet on neutral ground, peaceably, talk, rather than, destroy.
So would you give me some time to prepare for the meeting?
Yes, we can arrange for it whenever you need. Assuming it's, within an obvious amount of time suitable for a human like myself.
He says 5 days
That's fine.
to get my affairs in order, say. And then I will return here and follow you to the meeting point. But I want your assurance. All of you. And he points to each of you in turn, sitting here. I want your word, your bond, that if it comes to blows, you will stand with me and not with him.
If it comes to blows, we'll stand with the one who isn't the aggressor.
He says, that's not what I'm asking.
I mean,
You
as long
stand
as
with
you're not
me.
going to... Are you planning to attack him?
Haven't decided yet.
Well, I'm not... Again, we're offering a peaceful conversation here, so if you are planning to attack him, don't try and lie to me and say you're going to come with me, and then just... Well, if he attacks you, by all means. If you attack him...
He says, there are forms of attack that are not attacks, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
He says, Ashatiro has you believing that there can be a peaceable meeting between us, but he has deceived you. I just
I'll be
want you
honest.
to understand that before we move forward.
I'll be honest, I don't think anyone is expecting the two of you guys to walk out of this being best friends or anything, but it sounds like you may have a common enemy and a common goal. What happens beyond that is between you two, but what the talk about sitting down is to figure out what to do about this Gendrick problem.
Then I see the wisdom in those words. He says, the other difference between Ashatiro and I is that I have not underestimated the lot of you. And then he stands up, brushes himself off a little bit, and says, then well, I have a journey to undertake. I will see you in 5 days. And he takes his leave of you.
To be clear, we didn't actually agree to anything, right?
You didn't agree to anything.
Alright, fair enough.
And he said he'd meet us here in 5 days?
Yes, he's coming back to the inn in 5
Okay.
days.
Yeah, so we'll have to give him transportation.
And he goes back up to his room in the inn, and that's the last anybody sees of him for 5 days. Is anybody else doing anything of major importance in these 5 days?
Nope.
Nope.
No?
Eric is casting
Orphans.
Create Water repeatedly.
Orphans.
Yeah.
Splash.
Does our
Chris
desert
Smash.
crew stay in the desert for 5 days?
I mean,
Do
hell,
they-
if we have 5 days, I might try to sell those magic items that we found before.
What items?
The glaive.
We have 2 magical glaives. I'd just say give them to the men-at-arms.
I'm trading mine for a wand.
Or the Tempest Priest. I mean, I don't know. Okay, I don't know that our associate priest is a Tempest Priest, but he might be.
So, Eldove, you're going to spend those 5 days looking for a buyer for the glaives?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we don't-
preferably one that would, a trader of magic items who would just let me trade one for the wand I want.
Okay. And in 5 days, you find no such buyer.
Alright.
give it to our give it to the guy who's clericing over our land. Extra protection.
The wall that you keep running into, I mean, it's not to say you don't find anybody who's interested, but the wall you keep running into, these glaives are of elven make, and people are hesitant to use them openly in the desert where they're likely to run into hostile nomadic sand elves who will take offense to it. So you find a couple of collectors, but they're not offering a price that you're willing to accept. So yeah, in 5 days you're not able to come to an agreement with anybody.
What about the Guild of Sandals?
The Guild of Sandals will accept them as a gift, but they will not purchase that which was taken from their kind. They acknowledge that it was taken by right of conquest and that they belong to you, but they are not willing to purchase them from you. But they will gladly accept them from you with their thanks.
Yeah, I'll get back to them.
Okay.
Spoiler alert, Nodal will not get back to them.
So in that 5 days, does anybody keep Ashtiru abreast of what's going on?
After that meeting, I'll just issue a sending and give him the date.
Okay.
I'm
after
creating
5
a
days-
wicked oasis.
Wicked
Does he-
Oasis. Do I have to
does
put that on
he-
the map? Wicked Oasis?
Yeah.
Does Ashatiru request? Does he need transporting there as well, or is he gonna
He will,
find it?
because he has no idea where he's going.
Okay, fair enough.
You can't just tell him, go to the very ass end of the desert, then turn left. Doesn't work that way.
All right.
So after 5 days, Mr. Locke shows back up at the inn and says he's ready to go.
I assume Tarin would keep those that are holding down the fort in the desert for us the situation as well.
Yeah.
Well, I asked if you guys were going to just come back or if you're going to stay in the desert for 5 days.
So,
you made a comfortable little oasis for yourself. Why not?
we
Well,
all
I mean-
go into my demi-plane, join hands, and I plane shift us back to the desert.
All right. And you get attacked by ethereal dreadnoughts. No. So how do you guys get Ashatiru here?
I'll bring him.
Eldove brings him? All right. Who arrives first?
I would hope that they would try to arrange that they'd arrive roughly.
Is that the idea? Try to get them both here at the same time?
Yeah, at noon.
I was thinking, yeah, get them, have our two plane shifting people.
Mhm.
And where is the meeting going to take place? You guys are going to do this inside the tent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make sure neither of these are on the grid.
I was hoping they'd do it by the swimming pool.
I thought that was just for water. So
What do you have in the tent? What kind of furnishings?
Just a table and chairs.
Table
Yeah.
and chairs? Okay.
And some water for the mortals.
So,
Oh, sure. I guess I'll create some drinking left, too.
Yeah, I hope you haven't been drinking from that pool because Eric's been peeing in it.
Yeah.
Orphan hasn't been drinking anything, so he doesn't need to anymore.
the white is Mr. Locke, the orange is Ashatiru. And when they first see each other, you can just see the hostility in Ashatiru's eyes. Ashatiru at this point is not transformed. He has taken his Arcanoloth form. Mr. Locke, on the other hand, looks the same as he always does. And Ashatiru says, kind of condescendingly, says, I believe they've already seen through the shroud. Perhaps you could drop it. To which Mr. Locke replies, I quite like my shroud, thank you. And they wait to be invited into the tent. And when they are, they're sat at opposite ends of the table. And Mr. Locke opens and says, So, you and your death priest tried to kill me. That was exciting.
Off to a great start.
And there's some arguing going back and forth. And they're speaking in common. And the argument going back and forth is that Mr. Locke does not believe that Ashatiru wants to rebel against Gendred, because Ashatiru stood next to Gendred and aided in the original attack, the one that was supposed to kill Locke and trap his soul. And Ashatiru cannot make Mr. Locke believe that he only did that to keep up pretenses. He has to make Gendred believe that he is his steadfast ally. And he points out, Gendred tried to negotiate for my soul, and the only reason I got to keep it is because I sold him 3 others. And so this goes back and forth, and so far they're not able to make any common ground. So that's where the mediators come in. How do we go from here?
Gentlemen, if I may.
Okay.
I am but a simple force
Be right
gnome. Mr. Locke, can you concede that if Ashatiru was not sincere, that it would be foolish for him to even show up for this meeting that he asked for?
Says, I concede nothing of the sort. In fact, this is a very smart play for Ashatiru. He says, if I were in Ashatiru's place, and I wanted to gather support, what I would do is sell him to Gendred. Any honeyed words which need be, I would get him to trap himself. He says, of course, Ashatiru does not have my acumen for these kinds of dealings, and so he's had to resort to brute deception. To which Ashatiru simply scoffs.
And Zook will ask Locke if he's aware of what happened to name. And I got it right here. If he's aware of what happened to Yorksis.
And he says, it was before I became acquainted with Gendred, but I do know the story.
So you're aware of what happened to the last member of his inner circle who took arms against him?
He nods. Ashatiru says, so there it is. You understand that I come to you in friendship, that I need you as an ally to remove Gendred from power. Mr. Locke turns to Arik. May I trouble you for a cool glass of water?
To be fair, if and while Arik, I don't know. Let's see if Arik actually.
Well, he stepped away, I think.
Yeah, I think no, I think McDohl actually stepped away for a second.
Oh well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think. Let's do something. Hang on.
Tarin says,
Oh, to be fair, I mean, and I'm speaking to this point to Locke. If you're insinuating that their plan was to bring us all together so they would capture us all at once, that would also put both of us against all of them, and that's dangerous from their perspective. Better to isolate us. I mean, it's not like, and I'll wave to myself and Eldove, it's not like any of the members of our group are sufficiently paranoid about not traveling alone.
Mr. Locke says, he replies, what gives me pause about this situation, more pause than trusting the Arcanoloth in the first place, is that you all have denied the help that I've offered, and so readily accepted his. So I want to know, what is it he has offered? And at this, Ashatira looks a little pleased with himself. He's managed to outfox Mr. Locke, in a sense.
Quite simply, he didn't ask for any costs. He asked for us to be moderators and to bring you together, but he didn't ask for us to do anything specific or to give him anything in return. This is his way of meeting our common interests, which for you was much the same, but you also had conditions. And while I completely respect your ability to put those on your aid, he was a little bit more open with just, we have common goals, this is how to achieve them.
Orphan will also chime in here and say he also hasn't proven, he also hasn't failed the test of friendship in the way that you have.
He kind of scoffs at both of you and says, make no mistake. That the Arcanoloth has not told you his conditions does not mean he doesn't have them. I simply told you what they would be up front. I simply gave you the information you needed to make decisions, and he looks at Orphan, to make decisions that you should take responsibility for. He says that you bumbled into Ravenhair's library and accosted her books is not on me. I gave you the information, I told you who she was, and you confirmed that I was telling the truth.
But
that you almost got into trouble is no concern of mine.
And there it hangs on that. That we don't get into trouble is no concern of yours, and that's a problem.
And
That's a
Ashatiru,
problem if you expect us to work.
Ashatiru is sitting on the other side of the table, motions to Orphan and says, you see, this is what happens when you make contracts with your kind.
Zook will step in and say, folks, we are here merely as the moderators. This isn't about us. This is about these two gentlemen. Let's try and keep it between them.
Orphan steps back and just is friendly.
Ashatira is like, well, I would never send you to an evil library.
Never.
At this point, Ashatiru says, I would like to answer his question. I have nothing to hide. I have no reason to be deceptive. I offered them information about all of the Ribs of Ith, which you yourself don't have access to. I could tell them things they could actually use against the cults. And Mr. Locke, after a moment, says, okay, I'm listening. And then Ashutiru recounts what he told you all on the boat. He can share the identities of the Ribs. He can share potential weaknesses of them, how to bring them down, if need be. To which Mr. Locke listens very intently. And then his response is, that is a good argument. But I have no reason to believe I can't come by that knowledge on my own, given enough time. And Ashutiru again scoffs at that. Mr. Locke now looks at Tarin again. Well, he looks back and forth between Tarin and Zook and the others in the room. And says, you know what I want. You know what I can offer. I don't see why we need his help at all.
Oh, but the more the merrier, Locke. I'd rather have a powerful member of the Rib on our side than against us.
Orphan nods and says, Originally, we thought that we would do this without anybody's help, but you convinced us that we needed help, and so that we're getting all that we can. Yours, his, whoever offers to contribute.
And Ashitiru adds to that and says, and to know that next time Gedrid comes for you, he will be more prepared. He says, there will be no slipping his bonds a second time. Mr. Locke looks to each of you again in turn. And he says, were I to ask for your counsel, what would it be? Looking around the room at you guys. Starting with Arik, if he's back.
Yeah.
So he looks at Arik first. He says, were I to ask your counsel, what would it be?
I don't know.
And he chuckles and looks over to Zook.
Well, quite frankly, we had only gotten so far as to get the two of you at the table. Right now, I don't know that there are any particular conditions on the table. Are there?
Because I'm asking your advice.
I would listen to what he had.
You would trust this man.
I would listen to what he has to say, and I would strongly consider taking out a common foe.
He looks over at Eldove. And you, Sorcerer.
Out of character, I just missed like the last 30 seconds because my headset died.
Oh, he's saying...
He's asking whether or not he should trust this guy?
He's saying, if I were to ask your counsel in this matter, what would it be? What is your advice, in other words? If he were to ask you for your advice in navigating these negotiations.
Personally, I would just help him as much as I can, so much as it meets my own interests.
He turns and looks at Orphan in the corner. He says, you, though there is no love lost between us, surely you would not steer me wrong.
Orphan says, "You've convinced me that we can't do anything against Genjit alone. First of all, and second of all, that sometimes in order to get our aims accomplished, we have to accept help from allies from whom we may not want it. And I think both of those things apply between the two of you as much as they do between the two of us."
He looks over to Tarin. And the good captain?
If I were you, I would find a group of hapless mortals that didn't know any better and make them an open-ended contract, which enables both of our abilities while still sabotaging my enemy here. I believe that's the way it's normally done, isn't it? Only in this case, you could also do something that would send the adventurers that you've already enlisted onto a suicidal mission in the middle of enemy territory that would destroy both your normal enemies.
Captain!
Yes.
Stop giving him ideas.
If he hasn't thought of this already, I would be surprised. As I said, I would send the group of adventurers you've already enlisted onto a suicidal mission into the enemy's territory in the common goals for all three groups, thereby eliminating two potentially dangerous threats all at once. I believe that's the way your type normally does this, isn't it?
He looks very pleased as you're describing this scenario. He looks amused that you thought of this. And then he turns to Khalil and says, and you, the good soldier, they call you Thunderstruck.
That they do. The only advice I can give is similar to what my good friend Zook said, that if it only makes sense that even if there's any chance of you working together, that you should seize that opportunity, because sometimes a group is stronger than the sum of its parts.
And after Khalil is done speaking, Ashitiru kind of looked gratefully around the room at all of you who've spoken. And he says, understand, Destin. My primary goal is to be free of this world, just like you. And you both know that in other circumstances, in the before of this place, and hopefully in the after, these talks between us would go very differently. Mr. Locke nods and says that they would. He says, very well. I will agree on two conditions. And he pulls 3 envelopes out of his plate, places them on the table, and slides them over towards Zook and Arik. He says, the first condition is that the mortals, the mediators, the would-be adventurers, when he says that, he looks over at Khalil, accept my advice and my conditions laid out previously. Sign the deal. He says, second, from you, looking at Ashitiru, he says, once we're free of this place, once you have the cult in your grasp, it's a bond of servitude for 101 years. And Ashitiru breathes very deeply. And then without flinching, he agrees. He says, it'll be done.
I would like to introduce one being, that we are now involved as well. I would like a copy of the diagram that you showed me earlier, Ashitiru, before I will agree to this plan.
He says, of the compass.
Yes.
He says, I can have a copy made.
Alright, and the second condition, that I take all 3 of these, and I take them under myself, and not my companions, in terms of both the duties and the requirements should they fail.
To that, Mr. Locke looks over at you very intently. He says, who is your patron? Why do you not have a soul?
They tell me it's the Flumphs.
He holds out his hand.
For a handshake?
Yeah.
I'll look to the rest of the group to make sure no one is going to stop me, and then I will shake his hand.
Orphan standing on the wrong side of the room, half buried in jam. So.
Oh, just let me just get over there and stop you from not making me part of this.
No, Tarin, stop.
Okay.
No, stop. Come back.
Now, at this point, I kind of don't care anymore. not about Tarin, I mean about this deal. I kind of don't care what happens with this guy.
Listen, Tarin's soul is going somewhere that none of us are going to be happy with.
So, for the rest
Where
of the
it
session,
goes.
you guys might want to take some notes here, because these will be applicable for future adventures.
Okay.
So we are going into the end game now, and like I said before we started streaming, it's going to get a little sandboxy. There's a lot of directions you can go.
Apropos for this map.
Right up front, what you can get from Ashitiru and from Mr. Locke are information pertaining to the ribs and then the contents of the 3 envelopes.
Okay.
So, Tarin, where and when do you open the envelopes? Like, what do you do it with right now in front of everybody, or?
Actually, yeah. Before I shake his hand, I stop. Let me reread those to make sure they're the same ones I read before.
They're the same ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well then, yeah.
Do we need to make a con save? I want to
No, they're not magical. The first one, he describes the location. Actually, let me get the world map back out. Which tab is it in? That's Kiska. There we go. World map. Hosts. Table. Rectangle. World map.
Map of worlds.
He describes the location on this island here. This large island in the ocean, covered in forest.
Okay.
He describes the location of a magic hut that he says is controlled by a powerful witch. And he gives you very precise instructions on how to reach it. He tells you exactly where to dock your boat on the shores. He tells you exactly where and which direction to travel for how long. And the directions he gives are not geographical directions. They're not walk until you see the big rock, then turn right. They're more like disembark your ship under the light of the full moon, travel north until daylight, that sort of thing. In return for the contents of this envelope, in return for these instructions, he says once you have control of this magic hut, he wants to be able to walk in the front door and out the back. That's it. He wants to leave Trennis. So as payment for these locations, once you have it, you have to let him go through.
Okay.
Mr. Locke's kind, which also includes all fiends, most outsiders actually, celestials, all those beings. He describes this hut as a place they cannot enter without being invited. This is why he has not been able to go inside for very long.
witch
What?
won't invite him, but if we take control, we can invite him, or we could somehow get the witch to invite.
Well, the deal is mortals don't need an invitation. So his hope is that you guys go in, seize control of the hut, and then at that point, let him go through.
Fair enough.
The second envelope. He describes several others of his kind. Allies from long, long ago that this witch snared and made into her thralls.
Are
He said-
these devils? Specifically, how well does he describe them?
He doesn't describe them very well at all. He says you'll know
Okay.
them when you see them. But he says that he wants them released. And if they have lost themselves, if they're too far gone, he wants you to bring death to them, harvest their eyes, and return them. So the second condition is the eyes of those fiends. And in payment for this, on delivery of the eyes, he will grant a great power to Tarin. He says he will give him a boon the likes of which he cannot receive in the mortal realm. The third envelope contains the name of a warlock, Melinda, one of the Ribs of Ith, and it has written in Infernal her true name. Locke describes her patron, who's a demon, a very high-level demon, that he has had clashes with in the past. And through a twist of magic and luck, he has learned the true name of this patron. And by using it and bringing this demon under your thrall, Melinda will lose all of her magic power. In return for this, he wants Melinda and Gendred, their corpses, when you've killed them. Specifically, he asks for their hearts, brains, and eyes.
Does he have instructions on how to actually use the true name?
He says that can be tricky. But if you were to invoke it in her presence when she's attempting to use her powers against you, you would see its effects manifest relatively quickly. He also has some various advice about the magic hut. He was allowed inside once, but was very quickly expelled. But he's learned a few things, that if you were to travel there, these are things you need to keep in mind. He says the hut stretches into many spatial dimensions, folds in on itself again and again in ways that are difficult to wrap your head around. A door, when opened one way, goes to one room. When opened another, it'll go to a different room. But you should look to doors of silver, gold, black iron, and green-crusted bronze. These are the doors that lead deeper into the folds of the hut.
In that order?
One more time.
Silver, gold,
silver,
black iron, and green-crusted bronze. He says there's no order in particular, but those are the doors that can lead both to the next room and to the deeper fold.
So, more complicated than a tesseract, I'm hearing.
He doesn't really know what that is, but...
Was hoping it was just a tesseract.
It's a TARDIS.
It's a TARDIS. He says, within the hut, mirrors are your enemy. Beware them.
Silver, gold, black iron, green, encrusted.
This is deeply shocking to Eldove.
The next piece of advice he gives to Arik, specifically. He says, this witch does not suffer the gods to enter her hut. When you're inside, pray as loudly as you want, but they will not hear you.
Oh, good.
What he's describing is when Arik goes into the hut, he brings with him only the spells and magic and abilities he has at that moment. He cannot pray for more spells with a long rest. He cannot recharge. I don't think he has any strictly clerical magic items, but they can't be recharged in there. You will be cut off from Osprey while you're inside.
Oh, that's not actually as bad as I thought it was going to be.
So you can cast the spells you have prepared when you go in. You'll be able to turn undead with as long as you have your holy symbol, but anything that reaches out to Osprey's realm to grant you power is off limits.
Wait, does that include does that include your healing spells?
No, he'll have them.
Yeah.
If he prepares them before he goes in, he has his full
Okay.
complement of healing magic.
But a
Once he
long rest
uses
won't
them all,
recharge him.
long rest won't help him.
Okay. Fair
Does
enough.
that include channel divinity related stuff? I'm guessing it does.
It depends on the actual ability. Channel Divinity to turn undead will function, because it's something that you do yourself with your holy symbol. If it's a channel ability that communes with Osprim, like a Divine Intervention, that will not function.
That sounds like something you might want to offline with Brick to make sure that you've got the right setup before you go in.
Oh no, I'm not giving him any more information than I just told him. That's it.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
That's it. The next piece of advice he gives to Zook, specifically. He says the witch tolerates visitors, but abhors thieves.
Okay.
Do not take anything that is not yours. If you do, make sure you can defend yourself.
Well, if we're talking to her, I ain't stealing nothing. If we're fighting, we'll see.
And then the last piece of advice he has is he tells you that the witch, powerful though she may be, is still mortal. She was a human once, and mortality frightens her more than anything in the universe. In order to attain immortality, she's built a trap inside of her hut to trap death itself. Once death is trapped, she seeks to negotiate with him for her immortality. I don't know what would happen if one of you were to fall into this trap, but it would not be pleasant.
Do you know anything about the nature of this trap?
He doesn't. He shakes his head.
Okay.
Do any of you have anything else you want to get from Mr. Locke?
Real quick recap. The first envelope, it has the location of the hut. He wants to walk in the front door and out the back. What is he giving us for that one?
The location of the hut. He gave you instructions on how to get there. He told... Yeah, the product was the location of the hut. The price was, once you have it, you have to let me use it.
Okay. I don't know
this-
what good
this-
the hut is to us without... Okay, never mind.
Orphan's just going to bring up, I have this one practical question. How are we meant to deliver on the promises of the second and third
I'm still on, right? Yeah.
envelope if you've already gone through the out through the hut?
He says he hasn't. He was invited in once, many years ago, but...
No. But because the first thing he wants is to go through the hut, right?
Mhm. Because that's,
So
that's a
if
way
he-
off Trennis.
Right. So if he goes through that, how are we supposed to give him the stuff he wants?
That's trivial. You can just turn it over to him when he comes through, or meet with him afterwards or before, or it doesn't matter. You can put pile all the corpses into a big box and have it...
So he's not going through until the whole thing is settled.
Right. I mean, he can't anyway. Until you're in control of the hut, you don't have the power to invite anybody in.
Right, but if we take the hut before taking out the other dudes, he's not gonna just gonna skip out on us. Is basically what she's asking. Because he wants the other stuff. He wants the corpse of Melinda and Gendry.
And all three of those envelopes are binding. So if you give him, for example, if you free his companions and then you kill Gendry and Melinda, but you don't ever take control of the hut, Destil's going to be on the hook.
Okay.
He'll have to, at some point, Destil's going to have to make good his word, or else Mr. Locke will come to collect.
Right.
So that is what you get from Mr. Locke. From Ashatiri, you get the identities of the other ribs. The first would be, I would think, of interest to Eldove. His name is Omte Amunet. I'll let you guys spell that however you think it's spelled, because... he is a blacksmith and an enchanter. When he first came in contact with the guild, when he first joined, they found he had latent sorcerer powers. He derives his magic from blue dragon blood in his ancestry. And that appealed to Ith, because Ith is, or was, at one point, a blue dragon himself. And so, Ith decided to try an experiment. He brought Omte to his realm, and he underwent some kind of fell ritual, the same kind of ritual that turns dragons into shadow dragons. He tried this same process on this sorcerer, and the result was madness. but an incredibly large amount of power. So while Omte is a sorcerer and he derives his power from the same place Eldove does, he would eclipse Eldove in just sheer ability.
Eldove is really pissed to hear that.
But
Eldove thinks they're just mistaken.
because because of Omte's very close blood bond with Ith, Ashatiru says he's very resentful of Gendrid, and that if you were to look amongst the ribs for another ally, he would be the one to shake down.
Where is he?
I have that here. Hold on a second.
In the end,
Zinkiska.
Whoa!
the next
no,
one
he's
is
at a.
Null Kantar.
He works at a vampire's keep in the Shadowfell. He works there as a blacksmith and enchanter, of which he is world class in both aspects. And so he serves both this vampire and Ith. And Ashatiru is not sure whether this vampire knows of Omte's connection to the guild or not. If he does, he considers this vampire may also be an ally, simply because toppling this blue shadow dragon death cult in the area and putting a more friendly person in power there would benefit his realm as well.
So we're gonna become bros with Dracula. Okay.
With Dracula. The vampire's name, he says, is Strahd von something. I gotta look it up.
My god. Strahd von
No,
Strahd.
I wouldn't throw Strahd at you guys. This is not the
Really?
correct way to use Strahd von fucking Zarovic in a game.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah, who's that?
We'll
Don't worry about
explain later.
Is he the guy from that board game?
Yeah.
Oh, this is a great name. Thank God for Fantasy Name Generator. The vampire's name is Grigore Albezcu.
Nice.
Oh, that is great.
That's a great name.
That is a great
Gregory
name.
Kuhn.
Grigore Albezcu. So he says that's your best bet as far as allies within the actual ribs. He says Ravenhair you already know about, but he says don't count on her to stand with you.
We're just hoping at the very least she'll stand aside.
Right.
Yeah.
The next one is... His name is Muirdram Axe of Fire. He says Axe of Fire was once a holy knight. He's a dwarf. And a renowned dragon slayer. He slayed several dragons, brought them to their knees, amongst the mountains and Underdark of Tetlateus. And in this way, he amassed great wealth for himself, which he used then to fund conquests to further destroy more dragons. However, when he came out to set on a quest to kill Ith destroyed all of his companions and imprisoned Axe of Fire using a magical spell in a dungeon, tortured him for a century or more, destroyed his mind, and eventually one of Axe of Fire's descendants showed up, who Ith also killed, but not before he was able to give mercy to his forebear. So with Axe of Fire dead, Ith decided to raise him as a Death Knight, and in doing so, he raised in Ith's service. Axe of Fire's job is proxy and muscle. When there is a powerful magical artifact or something that needs to be researched that requires a lot of muscle, Axe of Fire is the one who goes out and do it. For example, if Ith wanted the Staff of the Magi and identified, okay, it's in this Forgotten Pyramid, Axe of Fire is the one he would send. That was my phone, sorry.
We're actually getting codec. We're actually getting these boss fight codec calls.
Right.
Front loaded.
The next, he says, is Melinda, who is the Warlock. She is Gendrid's closest companion. She became, immediately after he took control, she sidled right up next to him. She's his second in command. She's the one who Tarin has the true name of her patron. Ashatiru cautions you against leveraging that information. He says he does not trust Mr. Locke's information in this regard, so he would use it, but only at caution.
Orphan nods. Not trusting anything he gives me anymore.
Yeah, what harm could come from saying whatever words he gave us?
He said, as far as isolating Melinda, there's really nothing you can do. She's always going to be at his side. So when the final showdown comes, wherever that may occur, you can expect her to fight at Gendred's side.
Okay.
She has no particular function in the cult other than personal servant to Gendred. He says the last rib is an ancient beholder, a monster of ugliness and great power. And
Wait a second. Okay.
the beholder's name is Kethik. Kethik tried to steal Ith's treasure sometime in the past. Ith, of course, didn't take kindly to that. Bit off a couple of his eye stalks and bound him to servitude for a long time.
This all sounds very familiar.
After many hundreds of
does.
years of such servitude, Ith granted him to replace the eyes that were lost, magic stones that were more powerful than what was lost. And to this day, Kethik guards its treasury. He says the treasury sits in a ruined ziggurat high up in the mountains. It would be somewhere in this area here. On the
Oh, in the material plane.
in the material plane. He says that area links to the Shadowfell to where you can find Ith and Gendred. But the journey in and out is difficult. You can't just go to the ziggurat, sidestep over to the Shadowfell, and be there. You'd have to climb the mountain, starting at the base from each plane. So,
Does
I
he
have a
believe-
question.
sure.
But
Where does the word that was used that Orphan used to go inside Ravenhair's?
Ravenhair.
Yeah, where was she when she was inside the library?
Ashatir does not know.
Okay.
In fact, he says it's been a long time since he's made the journey to the keep. He says it's been a long time since he's had any dealing with any of the other ribs. He keeps to his self, and they keep to themselves.
What's his position within the?
Okay,
What does he do?
Okay.
Sorry.
Essentially, an advisor.
Okay.
He doesn't want to get into his personal history with you, but he says he served Ith for many years as a tactical advisor in terms of warfare. Ith does have armies of kobolds, orcs, gnolls, especially on the Romnean side of the mountains, and that Ashatiru advises him in the movement of these forces in a way that can protect his interests.
when he was describing this beholder that's guarding the treasury, is he basically saying we need to go through the beholder and through the treasury to get to Gendrick?
No, he's
That's
saying
basically-
exactly the opposite. He's saying from the base of the mountain, you have a choice. Climb the mountain in the prime material and go to where Kethik is in the treasury, or sidestep to the Shadowfell, climb the mountain there, and go to its base. He's suggesting taking Kethik out first.
Yeah, I was going to say, is Kethik liable to be... If we go towards Gendrick, would we have to expect Kethik coming for us from the flank?
He pulls off his glove, and he shows you the claws of his hand. He holds it out to you, palm up. And in the palm, Khalil, you see some kind of dark magic. And even just with the naked eye, you can see when he brushes a little bit of fur away from the padding there, there's something inside his flesh. He describes this as an alarm stone. He says if Ith were ever to come under attack, if the heart were ever in danger, the ribs would assemble to protect it.
Okay.
If this were to happen,
Understandable.
all of you would die. He
But
says
Kethik would be potentially isolated if we went to him at the treasury.
if you kill Kethik, there's no one to call on. And he cautions you. He says, if I am called in this way, if I have to serve in combat, I must serve.
Is that a compulsion?
No, but it's in my best interest. If it comes to
Notice-
that, you've already lost the fight. Why would I stand beside you?
How do we prevent you from being called then when we assault Gendred?
My advice is eliminate the other ribs as threats.
So if we've eliminated the other ribs, or have turned them, or have convinced them to remain neutral, then you wouldn't have to come.
He
But if
says,
there was anyone,
he
but
says
if
I
there
would
was
still be
anyone-
called, but if it's come to that and the ribs are called in, he says I don't believe you would win, and I would bank on the winning team.
I see.
As for the treasury itself, other than riches, should we loot it for other weapons? Or is it?
He says you absolutely may not, because once Gendred is removed from power and Ashatiru takes control of the cult, it will be his treasure.
No, I meant on our way in. Is there anything that would be helpful for us against Gendrick?
He doesn't know. He doesn't actually know the contents of the treasury. He says potentially, because he's been amassing this wealth for centuries. And he actually even says, to be bluntly honest, the nature of the cult of Ith is only to amass wealth for Ith. That's all as a dragon, that's all he's really concerned with.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm more interested in, believe it or not, I'm more interested in weapons to help us not die at this point than lining my pockets.
Yeah. In mechanical terms, I don't know what's in the hoard yet. I haven't rolled it up, so.
Fair enough.
Well, I
Two eyes.
I could pose this question:
Mm-hmm.
Would it be possible if we find something that is useful in our endeavor, with a bond of honor to return it once our deed is complete?
And Ashitiru nods and says, I would hold you to that word.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So, the next question I have, because we're going to wrap things up here in a couple minutes. What, if anything, do you guys do with Ravenhair? Is she brought in on the plan? Do you tell her anything? Do you attempt to woo her? Do you go back and kill her? What's the haps?
So she wanted some assurance that we were not going to do anything against it, and I think we have that now.
Yeah, I think also
now that our plan is to install Ashitira as the new head.
Okay.
As the new
Oh
heart.
God, but would she be excited about that new heart?
It doesn't really matter, because the only point is that we can assure her that that we're not planning to destroy the entire organization by showing her, look, this is our plan, this is our ally who is going to become the new heart.
And we've done this before.
We have done this before.
Here's the problem, guys. Here's the problem with that. Is that she isn't going to be very happy if we're like, oh yeah, by the way, he's totally being magically controlled, and we found someone else to do it after we're done with the guy that's doing it right now.
Okay, my thought is the less we tell her, the better. But perhaps we do tell her we have allies. We're going after the ribs. We are not going after Ith. Our plan is to cut out the heart.
I mean, I would say Ashitiru, but I wouldn't specifically tell her that he knows that the dragon is being controlled because he's planning to do it himself.
Yeah, we can even say Ashitiru is on our side. We have reasons to believe through his information that we can take out the heart.
Do you tell Ashitiru any of this?
What did he tell us about Ravenhair? Basically that he didn't think we could trust her to fight on our side.
Yes, he says when it comes to brass tacks, she's going to stand with Ith. That is his take on the situation. However, he also says that her job in the cult is to protect its cache of magical knowledge. And he says if you're able to find a way to cut him off from that, it would be a great boon to you in the end.
Right. And my thought is we try to figure out a way to get her to take a powder, basically. I don't think she's going to fight with us, but I think if we can get her to ignore the call because we are going to be cutting out the ribs, then that would be beneficial to her.
Okay, so you go back to Kiska, and what do you actually tell her?
Oh, are we doing this right now?
Yeah, I want to know what...
Yeah.
I have to know this to plan for the next session. Is Zook the one delivering the news?
Well, she gave me the letter, so I'll start the talking, but I think everyone should come with me, like as usual.
All right, start talking, yo.
Our minor show of force. I'll tell her we met with Ashitaru. We met with Ashitaru as she advised and gave him the letter, and he has agreed to help us out.
And she asks for specifics, like how is he helping? What is the plan? What did you promise him?
The plan is he gave us information, and our plan is to try to neutralize the other ribs and cut out the heart and leave Ith.
So you don't tell her that the idea is to install Ashitaru as the new heart.
My understanding was we were saying that was probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, I don't. I leave that part out.
Roll a deception check. Actually, don't bother rolling because I just rolled a 1. So she believes you.
Yay!
Literally, she
Well, that
rolled
was
a 1.
easy.
That's
Um,
awesome.
Easy.
And I ask her. Well, I'll ask her if she'll stand with us, but it sounds like she probably wouldn't. Then
She's not going to fight.
I tell
And
her.
if the call goes out, the ribs are summoned, she will fight with them. She says, but during... she sees she's on very shaky ground here.
And I tell her, if all goes according to plan, if the call goes out, there will be no other ribs answering the call. And it would be to her best interest to take a powder.
She says, while you're searching for the other ribs, I will make sure that they do not have access to the library.
That would be most helpful.
She nods.
That's about all we can ask of you. Thank you very much.
But whatever you do, don't do anything that would rouse suspicion, if you can.
And she's very good at keeping her head down.